Stop talking about comic books or I'll kill you. I don't care if the Hulk could defeat the man.
Hey, good morning there, comic fam. It's me, Bullseye Bob, here on a Saturday morning again. And as you can hear in the background, there is Christmas music playing. That's right, it's the few days after Thanksgiving. Hope you all had a happy Thanksgiving. And I just wanted to welcome you to another episode of Having Comics with My Coffee. Yes, right, it's the show where we get together, have a great cup of coffee, and we talk about the comics that I picked up this week, and I also give a few reviews. And so hope you enjoy the show today. We got a lot packed in. And of course, I'm coming to you live and in living color from the Refuge Coffee House in Portland. Refuge is at 9217 Southeast Foster Road. This is my go-to coffee house and the official coffee house of everything comics. And this is where I come to hang out. Come and look me up and come to the Refuge, have a cup of coffee, and let me know, and I'll come down and have a cup of coffee with you. And I just love that. Just want to give a big shout out to Sam from Sam's Tangled Web. This week he met me and we had some coffee here. We had a great time. We talked about comic books and all things comics. It was a fun time. Thanks a lot for meeting me, Sam. And I just want to encourage you, if you are ever in town, look me up. I'd love to hang out with you. So listen, we got a huge show today. We got all kinds of stuff. I want to make a few different announcements before we get started into the books for today. And the first one is here on December 10th in Vancouver, Washington, there's a huge event that's happening. And if you're in town, or even if you're not in town, I'd encourage you, come out this way, because for the first time that I've ever heard of, the executives from Image Comics are getting together, and they're going to be at I Like Comics in Vancouver, Washington, and they're getting together for an executive signing. That's what they're calling it anyway, but it's basically a bunch of comic creators who are coming to the comic shop to sign your comic books, folks. It's going to be amazing. Some of the names that are going to be there are Mark Silvestri, Jim Valentino, Eric Larson, Robert Kirkman from The Walking Dead is going to be there, and then the creme de la creme, Todd McFarlane's going to be there, folks. You're not going to want to miss this. I'm going to be there. I know my buddy Bueller is going to be there, and it's going to be a madhouse. But I tell you what, it's like a tiny Comic-Con in itself, because those are some huge names. And so this is happening December 10th, 7 to 10 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, and it's going to be an amazing time, guys. The next thing is that I'm on another show. I get together with my buddy Bueller and at Comics with Bueller, and he has his own coffee show, and that drops every morning at 5 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. And his format is we get together and have some coffee, and we have a discussion, and we have some pretty in-depth discussions, and it's a lot of fun. The discussion that's going to be dropping this Monday is about variants. Variants, are they good or bad? I know everybody gets them, everybody sees them, everybody has their own opinion about them, and Bueller and I talk in depth about whether it's good or bad for the industry, what we think about it, and it's a lot of fun. So check that out. Like I said, Monday morning, 5 a.m. Pacific Standard Time is when it drops. Go there, leave a comment, let us know what you think about it. We'd love to see you there. And but man, I got to tell you what, here we go. It's not the first Saturday of December yet. That'll be next week. But I tell you what, I'm raring to go. The year's almost done, folks, and we still have a lot of comics coming out that are just amazing. So here we go. So without further ado, we're going to get into the books that I read this week, and there's a lot of good ones here, folks. So first one is from DC Black Label. I'm really loving this Black Label stuff. I don't know about you guys, but the first one is issue 2 of The Last God. This is, of course, like I said, DC Black Label. It's not a superhero book, which I absolutely really enjoy. DC and Marvel doesn't have to come out with a superhero book. They can mix it up a bit, right? And so this particular one, like I said, it's issue number 2. It's written by Philip Kennedy Johnson. The art is by Federico Federici, and colors by Sonny Go. And this is a really good book. Of course, it picks up where it left off last time, where you have this group of fantasy archetypes archer and a magic user and a fighter and all those types of things. Anyway, they're kind of renowned because they took down this last god, which was basically a plague, a zombie plague that came up like from plants. And so in the very last page of the last book, you find out that the king, Tyr, who is the fighter of the group, he actually has that plague in him. So they didn't actually kill the last god. It's still there. And more importantly, it infected the king. And so now we start in the beginning of this book. They're all running from this plague thing. Tyr, he's turned into the plague that was the last god. And so most of the book is them trying to get away from all these zombies that are now popping up all over the kingdom, because this thing has been sitting there dormant, waiting for the moment to come out and get everybody, get its revenge, so to speak. And so in this particular case, you get to the very end and you find out that in order to kill the last god, when they were going to do it in the past, they had to do something terrible, and it failed. And Tyr, the king, he actually has bore the mark of what that failure is. They don't tell us what that failure is. I'm sure they'll get into it in the next book. But this was really cool. In the midst of them all running away, we got a little more character development of all those different characters that made up their main group. And the action was great. The artwork, I really dig the artwork inside of this. It's kind of a different feel. But I tell you what, it's really good. I enjoyed it. So this week, we're starting a new thing. I'll put a graphic up on the screen on whether I liked it or not. We're going to use Daredevil, and if I liked it, it'll be 2 sticks up. If I was kind of on the fence about it, it'll be a stick up and a stick down. And if I didn't like it, it'll be 2 sticks down. How about that, folks? So this one I give 2 sticks up, recommend it. If you're not reading it, I would say that you should get the first book if you wanted to hop in the story. You won't quite understand what's going on unless you have that first book. So just want to warn you about that. Anyway, Last God, DC Black Label. Good stuff, guys. Next in line, I have DC Comics, Detective Comics. And this is issue number 2016. And this is continuing, or is the last of the storyline of the Victor Fries storyline. It's called Cold Dark World. And so of course, I've been liking this book a lot. It has to do with basically Lex Luthor giving Victor Von Fries the ability to wake up his wife Nora. And if you know anything about that story, that's the driving force of his life, is the love of his life. Which I've always loved. I mean, back when I was growing up, Mr. Freeze was never a compelling character. Yeah, I mean, wouldn't you agree? Some guy with a freeze gun. But it was Paul Dini in the Batman animated series who wrote the episode Heart of Ice, and basically created this compelling character in Mr. Freeze, how he is just a guy who lost his wife, and he's been trying scientifically to revive her. She's been in cold freeze stasis, and he has basically lost all emotion in trying to get back to his love. It's such an awesome story, made Mr. Freeze a compelling character, and I've loved him ever since. But here we are. She woke up a couple issues ago, and she basically turned on Mr. Freeze. So here's the deal. In last episode, we knew that Batman and Mr. Freeze were going to team up to go take down Mrs. Freeze, Nora. And so that's where they start off on this. And I have to say, Batman puts a new costume on. Great costume. One of my favorite costumes that I've seen come, for Batman in a long time. He's got millions of costumes, but this one was really cool. He's got this red, mask. It's red and black. Really amazing. Anyway, inside of the story, they team up. They go after her. She basically, there's this serum that Mr. Freeze helps Batman unfreeze a bunch of people that Nora had hit with the cold ray. And so basically, when they finally get to her, there's confrontation between Mr. Freeze and Nora, and Nora basically just rips his heart out, and in the end, she takes this serum and pumps it into Mr. Freeze, and it starts to heat him up. Basically going to kill Mr. Freeze, man. It was like, oh my gosh. And what ends up happening is Batman can't take Nora down because now he's got to save Mr. Freeze. And at the end of the book, Mr. Freeze is in her state that she used to be in. He's in stasis because he has to be kept that way, otherwise he'll die. And so here he is, not able to see anything, everybody passing him by, he's just in a tube, and now Mrs. Freeze is out there. So we'll see her back later on down the road. A lot of fun inside of this book. I really enjoyed reading it, and I gotta tell you, this was probably my favorite run of Detective Comics that I've read in a long time. The ending was landed. I love the way they ended it. It's kind of a ironic ending to Mr. Freeze's story, but now we got a new villain, Mrs. Freeze, and I think she's more diabolical and more mean than he ever was because she's got a vendetta. She's got some anger that she needs to get rid of, folks. Anyway, great story. I give this 2 sticks up. And then next on the list is a Marvel book. We have Fallen Angels, issue number 2. I've been pretty vocal about this. I like the X books. I love Jonathan Hickman's stuff that he's doing with the X world. But out of all 6 of the books that have come out, the new X titles, this one has to be my favorite so far. And which is funny because it's not a normal X book, but I really am digging the story. I'm digging the artwork. This one is written by Brian Hill, and the artwork is by Simon Kurdansky, I think his name is. I've never heard of this guy, but I love his choices inside of the last couple of issues. He does a lot of close-ups. It's kind of like a painted style, but I really enjoy the artwork. And so basically, really nothing much happens inside of this book. There's a lot of I'd say character development and kind of developing where they're going to be going with this. In this one, you get a lot of flashbacks of Quanon's past. Of course, Quanon is now Psylocke, and so there was a lot in her past, a lot of samurai ninja type stuff, great action scenes. So, like I said, that's where you get that amazing artwork. There's a splash page. I think it's like on the 2nd or 3rd page. Amazing splash page, loved it. So basically, you get some X-23 coming to Quanon, asking her for help, because it seems like Quanon has mastered anger, and of course X-23, that's the emotion. She, just like her father, she goes into rage, so she's asking for help, kind of like asking Quanon to be her teacher in that regard. Quanon goes to Cable, young Cable, and Cable's getting these flashes of what's going on with that villain Apoth. Apoth is going to be the main villain of this. We've only seen Apoth take over a child's body and talk to the team, but they really know that that's who they're going to be taking out going forward, is this villain Apoth. Well, he sees some of the people that have been hurt by Apoth, and he's really mad. He wants to go after him. He convinces them they're going to go after him, and again, they need to get off Krakoa. It's not easy to get off of Krakoa without being noticed because it's a living island. And so they have to once again go to Mr. Sinister. I'm not convinced that Sinister is going to be the leader of the team, but there's like a quid pro quo thing going on. Anytime they want to get off, they have to go to Sinister, and Sinister basically asks them for something in return. And in this particular case, it was kind of like a Hannibal Lecter thing. He wanted to know something about Quanon's past or how she was feeling, and so then they get off the island. They go to this place where this thing is happening, and spoilers at the end. There's a robot that's there. They're trapped. I don't know if this robot is kind of like a new type of Sentinel. Kind of weird looking. Kind of looks like War of the Worlds type robot, tripod thing up in the air. Anyway, leaves us off there. Great. I mean, I like the writing. I love the dialogue, and I'm on board for this book, guys. So anyway, I'd give this one 2 sticks up. Really enjoyed it. And the next one we have is The Crow, Hark the Herald. This, of course, is by IDW. This is one of the independents I picked up this week. And hold on a second. Let me get my notes, folks, so I make sure that I got the names right. And so, like I said, IDW. This one was written by Tim Seeley, artwork by Meredith Laxton. and the colors by Katrina Maito, I think that's her name is, or Mai-Ho, sorry. Katrina Mai-Ho. And that sounds dirtier than it was supposed to be, but that's her last name. So anyway, this right here is kind of a different take on The Crow. These are one-shots, and so it's just a single contained story. In this particular case, it revolves around these 6 prolific killers who get together every year at Christmas, gathered up on this mountain, and they're kind of taking a break from their killing. They come from all different walks of life, and they gather together. And in this particular case, there's a girl and her father, and the girl, in the beginning you see her, she's taken down a deer with a bow. So she's a bow hunter. And they insult one of those killers inside of the lodge, and then it cuts to the next year. And in the midst of them getting together, they go outside, and then here is the Crow, and it's that girl that had the bow, and she's got the white face. She's the Crow. She got a bow, and the first guy she takes out, she plucks him right in the eye with the arrow. Great beginning. I liked it, but then it just kind of fell flat from there. It becomes really uninteresting. They really don't develop those 6 characters, those 6 killers. They really don't develop her or her dad very much. You do get a cutscene later on to find out how they killed her and her dad. But and then in the end, it's kind of a cool thing. The last one asks for forgiveness, and the Crow spares her life. I really wanted this book to be a lot better. I loved the cover. I thought that was such a cool cover. I was expecting more from a story that is so famous with the Crow, but I got to tell you, I just was unimpressed with this story. I did like the artwork in there, so I'm having a hard time not giving it 2 sticks down, but because of the artwork and because of the way they began it, I'm going to give it a stick down and a stick up. Pick this one up and let me know what you think. I'd like to hear your thoughts on it. But there you go. There's the Crow. Hark the herald, guys. Next we have a Marvel book, and we got Scream, Curse of Carnage #1. Here's another one of the symbiotes, Scream, and she has her own book. I didn't find out if this is going to be an ongoing series or if this is going to be a mini-series. I thought I heard somebody say it's going to be an ongoing series, which kind of tripped me out. But anyway, picked it up and wanted to see, how it was going to be. And basically, this starts off in the aftermath of absolute carnage. And you have this character named Andy Benton, and she has the symbiote Scream inside of her. And I guess because I didn't read the Absolute Carnage books, of course, I don't know if I've told you this, folks, but a lot of times when you have these major crossovers, I will not buy them until they're done. I've been burned so many times on Marvel major crossovers that I just kind of wait in the end to see what everybody says about it, because I'm not going to go out and buy all those books and be disappointed again, especially all the tie-ins. Usually I try to stick to the main 6 issues they come out with for the main story. And buy them then. In this particular case, haven't read the Absolute Carnage, so I don't know this part of it, but I guess the host for the symbiote Scream gave up the host to go save Andy Benton, and now Scream is inside Andy Benton trying to figure out its way inside of this new host. You can hear this, she can hear this voice in the background that's kind of alien. Can't understand it at this particular point, but she wants the sounds to stop. She's going through a lot of pain. Andy's going through a lot of pain because of her mom. I guess her mom abandoned her when she was a child, and so she's got issues of rejection and abandonment. She wants to know why through her whole life everybody has left her, and she kind of assumes that she's just going to be alone. And now she's not alone. She has this symbiote inside of her, and she's basically trying to tell it to go away. But my take on it is that they're going to become fast friends in the end, because she's going to realize Scream's not going anywhere. But we'll see how it goes. So anyway, she has no one. She wants Scream to basically shut up. Scream starts to find her voice inside of her head. And then there are some action scenes that they're pretty amazing. There's some Spider-Man tie-ins, like Aunt May is inside of this, and Andy talks about Flash Thompson, so I loved, the Spider-Verse tie-ins that were inside of that. And then this creature comes up from the depths, like from the sewers, from the ocean that is near there, and these are basically dead bodies in the aftermath of absolute carnage. I think there's a creature that's raising them, and they're kind of undead, and they come to basically attack Scream. And not specifically, but Scream comes out and kicks butt, and now we got to figure out what this undead thing is. And then in the very end, Andy's mom shows up, spoilers. And she's like, oh my gosh, I've been wanting to see you my whole life. You abandoned me when I was little. And Scream, inside of her head, is saying, don't listen to this lady. Don't listen to this lady. She's not who she says she is. And that's kind of where they end it. So, I don't know what's going on there, but I enjoyed it. It was a fun read. I don't know if it's strong enough to be its own title going forward. We'll see what happens with it, but I'll pick up the next few. And so I did like the artwork inside of it, so I'm giving it a very light two sticks up, because it didn't wow me, but I did enjoy it. All right, folks, and here is my pick of the week. And I got to tell you what, I was really surprised by this book. I didn't pick it up at first. I actually forgot about it when I went into my LCS. And then yesterday, I was like, oh, I forgot that book. Went over to the LCS. They still had it. Yeah. So I ended up getting it. And when I read it last night, I got to tell you, this is my pick of the week. And this is from Image Comics. It's Kiladelphia. Yes, and it is a detective story / horror story, and I got to tell you, I really enjoyed reading this comic book. Let me get my notes here. I got to be better at getting my notes so I don't interrupt you guys. All right, so Kiladelphia. This is written by Rodney Barnes, art by Joshua Sean Alexander. Don't know either one of them. I got to tell you, I'm going to be watching out for both these guys, because the writing was great. The artwork was something special inside of this. It's kind of a cross between, I'd say, an Alex Maleev and Bill Sienkiewicz. I mean, that's the kind of tone I got out of this. Really gritty, kind of painted, kind of charcoaly. Really, really great for setting the tone for this book. Anyway, it starts off with this guy named Jim Sangster Jr., and he's writing an email basically letting whoever it is that he's writing, he has this thing he has to do, and that they know that they would understand, and that he's basically living up to what his father would have done, or at least he hopes what his father would have done. And he basically says, I got to do this thing, and only you will understand. So he's going to do something drastic, whatever it is. And then it cuts to 10 days earlier, and he's a detective on the police force, and there's a bunch of missing persons cases that are going on, and he's puzzled by it, and it looks like missing persons has kind of dumped a bunch of these onto homicide, and now he's trying to figure out what's going on with it. Anyway, during the course of this 10 days, you start to find out something really sinister is going on, and in the midst of it, he finds his father's journal. And as he's reading this journal, his dad starts talking about this crazy stuff about how there's vampires. And he's like, either my dad was making a joke or he went off the deep end, but that's crazy. And he's reading, and this is a guy who's kind of haunted by his dad. Everything that he does, he kind of hears his dad's voice. He never lived up to what his dad's expectations were. And even after death, he's kind of there haunting him. And so he gets this journal, and in the end, he has to know the truth. So he goes and finds one of his dad's old associates. They tell him, if your dad was talking about this particular subject, he would have been at this place. And the name of it kind of translates into Hell's Hall. And he gets there, and lo and behold, he finds these vampires, and then escapes. He gets away from them. And I got to tell you, he gets to the end of the book, the very last page of the book. I'm not going to tell you what happened, but it's a lot of fun. It's like everything I'd want in a horror book. It's great writing, great artwork. I really can't wait to get the next issue of this. Great stuff, guys. I give this 2 sticks up. It was pretty awesome. Kiladelphia from Image Comics. Get this one, folks. You can actually still get the local comic shop day variant. They still have that in a few different places. I picked that up as well, and this is a really great one. Yeah, folks, so that's my books. I also have a couple of books that I read this week that I'm not going to review, but I wanted to mention just because I can't review everything. I did get the Tales from the Dark Multiverse, and this one goes back and does a what if on Infinite Crisis. And so this particular book was okay. I'll give this one a stick up and a stick down. Next one is The Flash, and this is continuing the Rogue story where they've taken over the world, Captain Cold, and the artwork in here is incredible. The story I'm still not sold on, and so I'm not going to give it 2 sticks up just yet. I'll give it a stick up and a stick down, but I'm starting to turn, folks. I'm starting to turn on this story, so I think I'm going to like it. And last but not least, I got X-Force #1. This leaves off right where the other one left us with Professor X being assassinated, and I'll give this one 2 sticks up. The artwork was great, liked the writing inside of it. The story was really good. So those are my books, folks. Hope you enjoyed that. Let me know what you think. What did you read this week? And then last but not least, one of the things that I do is I always show you something that wasn't from my pull list that I got, and this is kind of fun, folks, but here's the deal. Here you go, Saga, and this is the volume 1 that collects the first 17 issues of the series. This is not something that I actually picked up. Somebody got it for me, and I got to tell you, I've tried to stay away from Saga for a long time. Everybody says, oh, it's the best thing, you have to read it. I hate when people tell me I have to read something, so I've stayed away from it for a long time. And so somebody convinced me, no, you got to, please, I'll even get the book for you. And I'm like, okay, free comics, I'll go ahead and read it. And so right out the get-go, I was like, I don't know if I'm going to like this thing. I mean, the very first page, you have a girl giving birth to a baby, and she's talking about crapping herself. And I'm like, that's not my cup of tea, man. But I stuck with it for a little bit, and I got to tell you, the more I kept reading, the more I can't stop, folks. The writing is really good. I can't wait to see what happens in the next issue. I'm about halfway through the first 17 books, and now I'm at a place where I can't stop reading it. So there you have it. Bob's starting to read Saga, and he's liking it. All right. So there you have it, folks. There are the books for this week, and so I hope you enjoyed that. Of course, the next segment of the show is where I ask the question of the week, and this one comes from Sleepy Reader 666. If you don't know who he is, I just want to give a shameless plug at this particular point. He has a show. Go check it out. He does a review of comics as well. I love his format. He actually doesn't have the books inside of a bag and a board. He opens the books and kind of shows you the pages. He reviews a lot of books that I don't pick up, so I really enjoy that. And I love his opinion on those things. And so I will actually pick up a few books that I wouldn't normally pick up based on his reviews, and I really like that. So I watch him every week. Go check him out. He's a friend of the channel, and he's a great guy. He's actually met us a couple of weeks ago here at the Refuge and had coffee, and I hope to have a sit down with him going forward, and maybe we'll have him as a guest on the show. I'd really dig that. But his question came this week, and it basically was this. Do you have a favorite place or way to read your comics? Great question. For me, New Comic Book Day comes out every Wednesday, of course, and everybody at my work knows that's kind of like one of my favorite days of the week. Most people call Wednesday Hump Day. For me, it's New Comic Book Day, and so I'm going to get my new comics that day, folks. And so I have my ritual when I get off work. I go to my LCS, get my books, go look for anything else that wasn't on my pull list, and then I go home and get my chores done and settle in for the night. And then I got my spot, my reading spot. It's my comfy spot. It's my home away from home, even though it's in my home. And I sit down in that particular place, and I will just read everything I got for the day and thoroughly enjoy myself. And then if it's not there, then sometimes I'll bring comics to a coffee shop like the Refuge. And every once in a while, if I'm really compelled reading something, I'll take an issue to work and I'll read it on my lunchtime. And I work here in Portland, right on the river, and there's a couple of spots there where I can overlook the river, read my comic, enjoy myself. Really fun during the summertime, but nothing too special, guys. It's just, usually my favorite spot, my favorite chair at home where I recline and put my spotlight onto my books, and I go ahead and read them. It's one of my favorite parts of the week. It gets me through the week, folks. So there you have it. Hope you enjoyed this episode of Having Comics with My Coffee, and really thank you for tuning into the show. Hey, if you like the content that I'm putting out, do me a favor, hit that like and subscribe button, and because I'm going to be putting out more content going forward. A lot of great things planned. I do have a plan for my wife and I to have a different show. I think you guys will like it. I'll tell you more about that later. And then I'm planning to do a couple of countdown videos for Comic-Cons that are coming up. So stay tuned for that. And again, remember to go to Comics with Bueller this week and check out our discussion video. It's his coffee video. It's called, I always forget it. I want to make sure I get this right so that I do my brother right. But it's his show is called Comics and Comments. There you go. Coffee, Comics, and Comments. All right. But go check out that video. We have a discussion on variants, good or bad. And it's really fun, folks. And so go check that out. Until next time, make sure you support your local comic shop. Really appreciate you guys coming and watching. Excelsior, folks.
Continue to debate whether Logan's claws could pierce Steve Rogers'